Dear Medyascope viewers, welcome to This Week in Turkey. This evening, we'll be having two guests joining us. Suat Kınıklıoğlu and Ömer Taşpınar will be joining us to speak about Turkey-US relations in light of the upcoming Biden-Erdogan meeting at the NATO summits in Brussels next week. But first, let's take a look at some of the developments of the week. We begin our bulletin with the coronavirus-related numbers. According to the data released by the Ministry of Health on June 10th, the number of cases was 6,408, making the total number of cases reach 5,313,098. On June 10th, 96 people lost their lives due to the coronavirus, making the death toll become 48,524.
On June 4th, Health Minister Fahrettin Koca stated, "As of today, 30 million doses of vaccines have been administered. More than a third of our population has been vaccinated. We have an agreement for doses of vaccines for 3 times the number of our population." He added that the number of deaths dropped below 100. In another statement released on June 8th, he articulated that family physicians will also be able to provide the BioNTech vaccine along with public and private hospitals. According to new data, the provinces in which the number of cases decreased the most in the past week were Gümüşhane, Bilecik, Bayburt, Kocaeli, and Kırklareli. In addition, Koca stated that the inoculation of musicians, film and TV production teams, faculty members, and university staff members will begin on June 9th so that universities can start face-to-face education in September. Koca also mentioned that the age of inoculation will drop to 45 as of June 10th. Next week, 4.2 million doses of BioNTech vaccines will arrive. Medyascope correspondent Burak Tatari spoke with Dr. Taceddin İnandı from the Association of Public Health Professionals Infectious Diseases Work Group on the vaccination process in Turkey so far. According to Dr. İnandı,
as you mentioned, 15 to 16% of the population has been vaccinated with 2 doses. The vast majority has taken the Sinovac vaccine. Our goal is to vaccinate 70 to 80% for social immunity. With new and more contagious species, 70 to 80% will remain inadequate, and we will have to aim higher. Despite the fact that the range of immunity we need to reach is 70 to 80%, the range we are at is only 15%, even when we consider all the people with 2 doses of vaccines fully immunized. When we consider the situation in the terms of the Sinovac vaccine, only 50 to 60% of the population will develop immunity, and at the rate of not contracting disease will remain around 50 to 60%. Even with 2 doses of Sinovac, people easily contract the disease. Therefore, the Sinovac vaccine creates a problem for social immunity. Even if we vaccinate the entire population, we won't reach a sufficient amount of immunity. In this respect, if we continue to use the Sinovac vaccine, we might need to require a 3rd dose. Maybe after the 3rd dose, the level of protection will increase, but this requires new research. The vaccines approved for use today are all safe in terms of damage it might do to the human body. In terms of effectiveness and protection, BioNTech's mRNA vaccine is more effective and protective than Sinovac. BioNTech is 90% effective, whereas Sinovac is only 50 to 60%.
Organized crime leader Sedat Peker released his 9th video, "We Grow Up as We Resist, Not as We Live and Age," on June 6th, where he continued his claims about government corruption. In his latest video, Peker's allegations were regarding bribery among government officials and on his connections and history with the ruling AKP government.
In the video released on June 6th, Peker claimed that some of top government officials had connections to the wanted businessman Sezgin Baran Korkmaz, accused of money laundering and tax fraud. Peker claimed that some judges, prosecutors, police officers, and press members had stayed in the Paramount Hotel in Bodrum for free. The hotel is owned by none other than Sezgin Baran Korkmaz, who had fled Turkey. Peker raised questions on how they were able to afford to stay in the hotel that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. In accordance, Peker said that it was the Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu who helped SBK flee the country. According to Peker, the Deputy Police Chief of Organized Crime, Resul Holoğlu, called Korkmaz and invited him to the Interior Ministry. Peker further claimed that Korkmaz came to the Interior Ministry on December 4th, where Soylu told him that there is an inquiry issued against him, that he needs to leave the country, and that the higher-up has knowledge of this as well. Peker also claims that Korkmaz fled the country on December 5th. 9 tweets of Peker that came as a continuation of his allegations made in the video regarding the presiding judge of the Ankara Regional Administrative Court, Esat Toklu's alleged free-of-charge stay in Korkmazis Hotel, were banned on Twitter on June 8th by the decision of the Ankara 6th Penal Judgeship of Peace. Peker also claimed that he had paid off a moneylender 300,000 Turkish liras to help a relative of Metin Külünk, a member of the ruling AKP's Central Decision and Management Board, which is the highest decision-making body of AKP. Külünk's name has been on the agenda as there are suspicions that he may be the anonymous politician that was bribed 10,000 Turkish liras by the mob leader, as referred to in one of Peker's videos. Peker spoke about paying off the moneylender for Külünk's sake in response to these rumors, as he said that he did not pay Külünk 10,000 Turkish liras, but he paid way more than that. Referring to the ruling party's defaming statements regarding Peker, the mob leader said that it was his coffee products, Tarihi Beyoğlu Kahvesi, that were distributed during the AKP's election campaign and that he has not taken any money from the party in return. Peker continued to talk about Yıldırım Demirören, owner of the Demirören Holding, which harbors one of Turkey's biggest pro-government media groups. Peker said that the Demirören Group took $750 million from Turkey's state-owned Ziraat Bank in order to buy out the Doğan Media Group and has not paid back the debt. Peker commented on this purchase as very cheap because he had raided the Hürriyet Daily News owned by Doğan Media Group, which scared off Aydın Doğan and had to give the media agency away for very cheap. Medyascope editor-in-chief Ruşen Çakır evaluated Peker's 9th video and the shift of angle of his speech with the following statement.
Sedat Peker used to lean his back against the government and speak to the public. Now the tables have turned. Now he leans his back against the public and speaks to the government. He's watched by millions of people, and he's telling his viewers to put pressure on the opposition and on the truthful journalists so that they can bring all of this to the political agenda. In the previous videos, he was telling the government to solve this issue. Perhaps he was hoping for a negotiation. But now, it seems that he does not have such expectations. Now, he wants politics to be involved in this matter, and that what he tells should bring out some consequences. I think this video really shows that he's targeting the government and Erdogan directly. This shows us that this is now a direct confrontation against the government, and that this matter is gaining a political dimension.
2 separate investigations have been filed against Workers' Party of Turkey Istanbul MP and journalist Ahmet Şık. One of the investigations concerns the comments he made during an interview with Medyascope editor-in-chief Ruşen Çakır about mob leader Sedat Peker's videos and their revelations about mafia state relations in Turkey. The other investigation concerns Şık's remarks during a program on Tele1 TV ahead of the March 2019 local elections.
On both broadcasts, Şık has accused the state of being a murderer. Interviewed by Medyascope editor-in-chief Ruşen Çakır in relation to mob leader Sedat Peker's videos and their implications, Şık said,
I was always called the man who called the state a murderer. Yes, brother, the state is a murderer. Those who were angry with me because I said this are now watching videos of Sedat Peker, where he says that the state is a murderer as well, and they're responding by saying, oh yeah, and applaud him. Yes, the state of Turkey is a murderer. That's it. Just as other states of the world. The history of all states is bloody. Turkey is not independent of that.
The other investigation relates to Şık's remarks during a program on Tele1 TV ahead of March 2019 local elections. During the program, Şık said,
Let me be clear. If the AKP and this ruling bloc are patriots and I'm a terrorist, I welcome terrorists rather than being a patriot like them. Every policy that would weaken this ruling power, everything to break its canine teeth, to pull its grinder teeth, are justified.
At the weekly parliamentary group meeting of the Nationalist Movement Party this week, MHP Chair Devlet Bahçeli insulted and targeted Şık, calling for the removal of his deputyship. Bahçeli slammed Şık for deeming the state a killer and called him a traitor who breathes the same air with us in parliament. During his speech, Bahçeli also reiterated his call for the People's Democratic Party's closure a day after a prosecutor resubmitted an indictment to the Constitutional Court for its closure, deemed a political operation by the HDP. Şık, on his part, was defiant in the face of the investigation and the politicians' comments against him. While he filed a criminal complaint against Bahçeli's targeting words, he reacted to the investigations on Twitter, saying,
"If I am to be tried because of my statements that the state is a killer, this should be because of my deficient assessment. Because the state is a murderer that commits serial murders. There is no state that doesn't have blood on its hands."
Our first guest this evening is former member of the Turkish Parliament and researcher Suat Kınıklıoğlu. Hello, Mr. Kınıklıoğlu. Thank you so much for joining us on This Week in Turkey.
Thank you for having me.
Since Joe Biden came to office, the relationship between Turkey and the US has become highly problematic, especially when we compare it to the relationship the two countries had under the Trump administration. For example, Biden waited a full 3 months before speaking with Erdogan on the phone. He recognized the massacres of the Armenians in the Ottoman era Turkey as genocide, not to mention the statements released by the State Department on Turkish government's rhetoric on LGBTQI plus communities and the call for the immediate release of Osman Kavala as well. Now the first face-to-face meeting between Biden and Erdogan is going to take place next week on June 14th on the margins of the NATO summit in Brussels. And President Erdogan, as you know, has expressed high hopes for this meeting recently, stating that he sees the meeting as a new start, a new chapter in Turkey-US relations. Now we'll speak about the particular positions and the articles on the agenda, but as a general evaluation, does this meeting and its aftermath have the potential to shift the dynamics in the relations between the two countries?
Well, there is certainly a gap and really a disconnection between how this trip and this meeting is being perceived in Washington and how it is perceived in Ankara. As you said, President Erdogan has been increasing the hype about this meeting and signifying it as a new beginning with this administration. But for the Biden administration, I don't think this is really the case. For them, it's President Biden, making a major European trip. He will be meeting with Putin 2 days after the NATO summit. Obviously, for them, it is important to re-establish their solidarity and ties with their European partners. And the NATO summit is the most appropriate venue for that. But especially after these erratic 4 Trump years, for them it's important to re-establish the transatlantic partnership that has been fading and has been largely damaged throughout the Trump years. Now, the meeting with President Erdogan is on the margins of the NATO summit, which in itself tells you how they look at it. One thing that the Biden administration has been keen on doing since President Biden has been elected is to remind Turkey that its sort of self-perception about its role in the bilateral relationship, it's put in a proper place. There has been some sort of inflated self-perception about Turkey since the Obama years. And I think you might remember when President Obama said that, President Erdogan is one of the 5 leaders in the world that he, consults him with. This was obviously before the Gezi Park protests and when the relationship started to deteriorate. But it's true, President Erdogan and the pro-government media is hyping it up. They want this meeting, first of all, the photo opportunity, obviously after 6 months of election, with a US president, something they give great importance to. Obviously, they will use it to calm down economic fears and the fragile Turkish economy. But what I hear from Ankara is that they're also preparing in-depth dossiers that they would like to give President Erdogan and his colleagues to convince them on some of the more problematic issues. Mm-hmm. I believe there is a gap in perceptions and the significance about this meeting. But as we know, there will be smiles, there will be handshakes, there will be the photo opportunity, and I think both sides will somehow leave with the impression that the relationship is going to continue. But there are obviously important problems, which I'm sure you will be asking me now.
Yes, exactly. For example, in the past couple of weeks, the US has indeed expressed its positions and expectations from Turkey on a variety of different issues. And I think that the two most prominent ones are the S-400s and human rights in Turkey. And there seems to be, in the past couple of weeks, some discussions about negotiations about the missiles where potentially a nuanced solution seems to be discussed. And this has been the case in the past before. I remember, there was the Crete model that was proposed, and now some other options seems to be being spoken about. So is there really room on the part of the US to negotiate anything with regards to the S-400s? I mean, are the current suggestions put on the table plausible from the US perspective?
Actually, there is no bargaining going on, but this also shows how successful the Turkish image shaping strategy is. They have been leaking things to the media as if there is some sort of debate going on, which also is governments do that. They try to strengthen their bargaining position prior to the meeting, and they also signal what might be acceptable in a deal, in a bargain. So we've been hearing in the last week specifically that some sort of understanding of the S-400s being stationed at Incirlik Air Base with joint control of them is something the Turkish side would be willing to talk about. My contacts with people in Washington indicate that there has been no bargaining, if that's or discussion about these things. It seems clear that Ankara wants to offer a few alternatives that they might think about before the meeting, and that could become acceptable for Ankara for sure. I think the S-400 issue will not be. I mean, no one is expecting this issue to be resolved during this meeting, but there will be a frank exchange probably. I mean, if the Biden administration stays true to the wording of the resolution that came out of the United States Congress, it says NATO territory. I mean, Turkish territory. So Incirlik is Turkish territory. It's a NATO base. It's in Turkey. So that would not satisfy that. There would have to be a change. But I think the significance of this meeting really lies in the fact that after months of a build-up, Ankara wanted Trump to win again for obvious reasons. That did not happen. President Biden and Blinken, Jake Sullivan had some rather critical remarks about Ankara after both before and after they were elected. So this is going to be the first face-to-face meeting. I suspect Ankara will put on the table stuff like the Gulen, case. It will reiterate how it views the Gulen group. It will criticize and will probably urge the United States stop providing military assistance to the YPG in northern Syria. And of course, the S-400 issue. Biden will probably raise the decline in democratic standards, the total eradication of rule of law in Turkey, etc. But the Turkish readout of the meeting will not mention those, and it will say it was a good meeting, was a great meeting. One thing we don't know is, despite the rhetoric about the Biden administration making democracy, human rights, rule of law a fundamental topic in US foreign policy, how much he will press President Erdogan on that in the meeting, we don't know. Mm-hmm. Will he, for instance, ask for the release of Osman Kavala? Or will he ask for the release of Selahattin Demirtas or similar cases? We don't know that. But I suspect a good part of that meeting will be spent on the S-400s. And as you know, these meetings on the margin are not too long. I expect an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Half of that is done by translation. So it's not a long meeting, a lot of stuff to be talked about. I think for Biden, the most important thing is to understand the extent to which Erdogan is willing to work with him. And as you know, 2 days after, he's going to meet with Putin. And for him, I mean, for him, it's going to be important to leave, this trip in laying out his strategy in how to deal with Russia and China, and obviously how to deal with Turkey.
I mean, as you mentioned, the S-400s, the U.S. is obviously not open to negotiation. So I feel like maybe Turkey might have to, at one point, swallow its pride and meet at least those expectations. Does Turkey have room for negotiation? I mean, does it have any leverage in terms of negotiation? Because you mentioned the Gulen case, the YPG, the aid the U.S. is giving to the YPG. There's also the Halkbank case and so forth. So if Turkey agrees to do whatever it is the US requires and demands with regards to the S-400s, does it have the luxury of asking something in return?
Well, that's a good question, and actually reminded me of what I forgot. I should have told you is there is a problem, a structural problem approaching this meeting. Ankara views this meeting as an opportunity to have a grand bargain with Washington. Whereas all these issues, the Gulen case, the YPG case, the S-400s, the potential for the Kabul airbase in Afghanistan to be transferred to Turkey, that all of these can be dealt with in a sort of basket grand bargain case. Whereas the United States views these on a dossier basis, and they will probably not be willing to go for a grand bargain. And there's no time in an hour and a half meeting to strike a grand bargain on these issues. So I think that will probably frustrate Ankara, because Ankara might have to swallow its pride on the S-400s if it wants more cooperation with the United States, perhaps in exchange for a lesser commitment by the United States to the YPG in northern Syria. But the problem is, for instance, the Halkbank case that you mentioned, the Biden administration is not going to go into that. It's in the judiciary, and it's going its own course, and they will not intervene as Trump did in this case. So that will probably frustrate Ankara, because Ankara views this whole affair with the United States as a big basket that is all interrelated, and that's not how the Americans look at it. So that's going to be a problem. Whether the S-400 issue can be resolved in a mutually beneficial manner, it's tough, because basically what the Americans are demanding is that the S-400s are removed from Turkish territory, and the Crete option doesn't work in this case. So that would be difficult for President Erdogan to explain domestically, and I think he would not be willing to do that. Now, what is the price for that? We don't know. I mean, the Turkish economy is very fragile. President Erdogan is keen on having a new sort of beginning with the US. As you know, Turkey has been in touch with Poland and, selling drones to Ukraine, things that Biden likes. But also, this administration is very resolute on confronting Russia and China. And for that, a Turkey that works with the United States is something that they need. So we don't know, which one will trump each other, whether the urge to have Turkey on board confronting Russia and China will bend Washington on the S-400s, or whether President Erdogan's willingness to work with the new administration will bend him on the S-400s to do something that would be difficult. So we don't know that, but I would suspect there will be a process. There will be some sort of, there will be meetings afterwards, probably defense ministers or foreign ministers. So there's going to be a process. So in this respect, I think Ankara is right. It views this as a new beginning. It's the beginning of a process, but we don't know whether this will really end up in the way that Ankara wants to. I mean, the Halkbank case right now is on hold, not because anything the Biden administration has done. It's a legal process. But in the coming month, there will be a verdict on Halkbank, and most likely something that Ankara will not like. We will see, but I actually do not put so much significance to this meeting. I think it's not going to be this sort of game-changing meeting that Ankara hopes to.
Mm-hmm. I mean, especially considering that, you know, as everything you mentioned, there hasn't been a major, I mean, the US has constantly voiced its expectations from Turkey in relations to the S-400s, and especially human rights. And now if we come to this issue of democracy, human rights, and freedom of expression, I mean, clearly we have made no steps towards making, you know, any improvements in that area. And if anything, you know, the mob leader Sedat Peker's revelations have shown the depth of the corruption and the deceitful relations and the disregard for the state of law and so forth. So, you know, how can Biden set an example for the promotion of democracy, considering, you know, Turkey, which is, you know, an ally, an important ally in many regards, as, you know, vis-a-vis everything that you've explained, you know, when this ally is responsible for such an enormous democracy deficit at home. I mean, is this issue of democracy just another kind of you know, something that can be bargained, can be used to bargain, and you know, other aspects of the relationship?
Well, we will see whether the United States will put its, you know, will align its actions with its words. I mean, the words were strong for a month now, even before being elected. And, you know, President Biden wants to have an alliance of democracies, some sort of summit, which, you know, there has been some criticism on that. But in any case, we will see. Turkey is actually one of the key examples whether his administration's promises will actually come into practice. I suspect they will raise issues like the Osman Kavala case, and that they will want at least some symbolic steps from Ankara that would allow the United States to go into a deeper partnership with Ankara. Because one thing that Ankara has a difficulty in understanding is, and I've been writing about this in the past, is unlike in the past, the Turkey issue has now become a strong domestic political issue in the United States. So now you have domestic audiences who care. Turkey is now talked about in talk shows on primetime TV in Turkey, in the United States. So in the past, Turkey policy was in the domain of a few, you know, security specialists, etc., and you could do anything you want. But now, you know, if you give Turkey leeway, like for instance, bringing Turkey back into the F-35 program is extremely difficult now, because it's such a big issue, and you know, there will be American audiences, there will be American senators asking why that is done. For, you know, what is Turkey done, you know, to be able to get back to the program. So whether this administration will press Turkey on democracy issues, to be honest, I am eagerly awaiting that, as you are. We don't know. If anything in the past, or any past behavior is in any indication, you know, for the administration resolving issues like the S-400 issue, coming to an agreement on the YPG, or Eastern Mediterranean is also something that Biden is very keen on supporting Greece and Cyprus. So I think those will trump, those will be more important for them. But I don't think that you know, this democracy discourse is totally, you know, empty either. There will be some demands, and they will probably follow up in checking, and they probably will want stuff like Kavala's release or other things that they will be monitoring and seeing whether Ankara is following up on those things. But no one really knows what will, you know, it's a bit also chemistry. I mean, I remember when I was a student in international relations, so I always thought, you know, countries have interests, and, you know, whatever those interests dictate, they will do. Yes, but there's also, after going into politics, I saw how decisions are made. And there's also personal chemistry. There is this relationship between leaders. We see it between Putin and Erdogan. These things are also very important. And Biden is no fool. I mean, he's been around for a long time. He knows Erdogan personally. So he, and you know, this is the end of Biden's career. He's not going to, you know, he doesn't need any Mickey Mouse play. So he will be probably very open to Erdogan.
Suat Kınıklıoğlu, thank you so much for having joined us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Our second guest this evening is Ömer Taşpınar, a professor of national security strategy at the National War College and a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, both located in Washington, D.C.
Hello, Mr. Taşpınar. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So President Joe Biden and President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will be having their first face-to-face meeting on June 14 at the margins of the NATO summit in Brussels. President Erdogan, in the past couple of weeks, has expressed his high hopes for this meeting, stating that he sees this meeting as the start of a new chapter in US and Turkey relations. And if we look back on Turkey's actions, Turkey has made some modifications to its foreign policy since Biden has taken office, taking steps towards the West, de-escalating in the Eastern Mediterranean, foregrounding its NATO membership. In light of how the relationship has evolved since the end of the Trump presidency and Biden's election to office, does this meeting and its aftermath have the potential to shift the dynamics in the relationship between the two countries?
The short answer is not really, because the problems in Turkish-American relationship are increasingly structural problems. And the Turkish administration, since the very beginning of the Biden era, wanted to have a reset in the relationship. However, the Biden presidency, especially Joe Biden himself, did not invest much in the Turkish file. He took his time before calling the Turkish president. He called him just before recognizing the Armenian genocide, which was very telling, in fact, in terms of showing that, he afforded to wait for that long, longer than 3 months. And yes, Turkey had high hopes that somehow a reset, a grand bargain could begin. And it took some de-escalatory measures. On the other hand, the structural problem, the main issue that bedeviled the relationship, poisoned the relationship for the last few years, is still the same one, which is the S-400 problem. And on this issue, I think the United States has decided that Turkey will not move forward and has decided to compartmentalize relations. And the mood in Washington for the last few weeks has been, can we work with Turkey despite the S-400 problem? Can we put the S-400 problem into a corner, compartmentalize it? The military sanctions will continue. But for instance, what can Turkey do for us in Afghanistan? Are there any points we can work together in Libya? What is Turkey's policy regarding Iran and the Middle East? So they are trying to find these two NATO members are trying to find areas where they can work together. And I think the fact that the NATO summit will have this bilateral between Erdogan and Biden is important. It's important in terms of Biden to get Turkish support for Afghanistan. This is a very big decision for the US administration, the decision to leave Afghanistan. And there's a major debate whether it was the right decision or not, because it's not a conditions-based decision, it's a political decision. The American public opinion is tired of the Middle East. They don't want to have American troops in Iraq or in Syria or in Afghanistan. Especially Afghanistan is the longest war for the United States. So I expect the bilateral between Erdogan and Biden to focus more on the issue of Turkish troops which are part of NATO in Kabul, whether Turkey can secure the airport in Kabul, a little bit on Libya. There is a lot of talk about American viewpoints changing on Libya and acknowledging that Turkey's role has been a positive role in the country. And finally, probably a few words on Iran. And for Turkey, Iran is very important, not because of the main nuclear issue, but because of the Halkbank case, the Turkish bank, which will probably be facing major financial fines, financial sanctions from the US Treasury. There's a case going on, and I wouldn't be surprised if Erdogan talks about Turkey's geostrategic importance about Iran and what Turkey can do to help the United States in terms of containing Iran or the nuclear file, and in return demand some flexibility on the Halkbank case, especially when it comes to Treasury, to make up its mind about how many billions, billions, the Turkish economy will have to be fined. So these appear to be the most important three issues: Afghanistan, Libya, and Iran. And on the S-400, to be honest, I don't expect something new. We're in a stalemate. It's a total deadlock. Turkey has dug its heels. It's not going to change its policy. It's not going to kick the S-400s out of the country. It's not going to find a place for S-400s other than Turkish bases. And the United States has made an offer that has been now public. I think it has been leaked. The offer came in 2019 about Incirlik Air Base, whether it could be put, whether the S-400s could be deployed at the Incirlik Air Base under joint Turkish-American control. And the Turkish side, as far as I know, has rejected that. And I'm sure the Russians would not be happy also with the United States looking at S-400 technology, although they should have predicted that this could have happened.
So there was room for negotiation. There was wiggle room on the part of the U.S., at least when it came to the S-400s. But from what I understand here, Turkey is not accepting this possibility, and because of potential consequences that might come from Russia.
So my understanding is that the legal room that you're talking about existed a couple years ago. In 2019. The United States made this offer in late 2019 under the Trump administration, when there was no CAATSA sanctions yet, when there was no resolution in Congress legislating that the S-400s need to be out of Turkish territory. There was room, there was flexibility, and the US side made the proposal to put the S-400s in Incirlik, with the understanding that they would either be deactivated there or under joint control, and that Turkey would not be using them, would not be operationalizing them. That offer was rejected by Turkey. Turkey did not want to consider that offer. I'm not sure whether America now is willing to come up with a similar offer, because now, as you said, there is a new paradigm. There's the paradigm of CAATSA sanctions, and the National Defense Authorization Act, which basically legislated that the military sanctions should remain in place until the S-400s are in Turkish territory, is much stricter than a couple years ago. So now the wiggle room, the legal room, the flexibility has diminished. The only possibility that is often mentioned is whether there can be a third country that both United States and Turkey would agree, a NATO member or an ally that could accept maybe joint Turkish-American control. That would check the box where Turkey could say, we still have control over it in this friendly NATO country. I can't think of a very friendly NATO country where Turkey would put the S-400s at the moment. I mean, some small neighbor comes to mind. Will Turkey agree to put it in Bulgaria? I'm not so sure. I don't think these possibilities are being discussed yet. We keep hearing sometimes alternatives like Azerbaijan or Qatar. These are not NATO countries. I don't think the United States would be willing to really consider this, and I'm not sure Turkey would either, because it would be really something that Erdogan would prove really not face saving, but face losing in a way, because he invested so much in the S-400s as a sign of Turkey's burgeoning relationship with Russia, as a sign of Turkish independence. Even the Turkish opposition saw this as a sign of independence from the United States, sovereignty, nationalism, etc. So the issue has taken a new life of its own since 2019.
Another issue that the US has continuously underlined next to the S-400s is the issue of democracy, is the issue of human rights and freedom of expression in Turkey. And when we look back, at the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months, I mean, we can clearly see that Turkey has made no kind of steps in regards to those areas. If anything, what with the revelation of made by the mob leader Sedat Peker, we can see how Turkey has had a long-lasting and essentially complete disregard for the state of law. So how much do you think Biden will press Erdogan on this matter? I mean, is there a formula where Turkey figures out a way to be authoritarian and please the West at the same time?
I think there would be less pressure if Turkey was complying on all other issues. Like if Turkey was willing to do what the United States wants in Afghanistan, in Libya, on the S-400 issue, in a way, the United States could turn a blind eye to Turkey being too authoritarian. But when you are not doing what the United States wants on a number of issues, if Turkey says no to maintaining its troops in Afghanistan, if there is disagreement in Libya, in the Eastern Mediterranean, on the S-400s, on the Kurdish question in Syria with the YPG, PYD, then for the United States, it creates almost more room to press on human rights issues. They can even afford to be a little bit more public about it, because the United States government under Biden has made democratization, human rights issues, and alliance of democracies, working with democracies, a major part of their foreign policy. And I'm sure that Biden will express some concerns about rule of law in Turkey and the need to liberate political prisoners. I don't think he will do it publicly. I don't expect the White House communique mentioning more than a sentence on the situation of rule of law and better governance has been discussed kind of sentence. I don't expect the Secretary of State to really, Antony Blinken also, to really speak up on this issue if Turkey delivers in Afghanistan. But if there's a total failure in the talks in terms of Turkey asking for much more support than the United States is willing to give on Afghanistan, if there is no agreement on any other issues, maybe out of frustration, the United States could say, we're really worried about Turkey's authoritarian slide. But we've heard that before. They keep expressing these things at a lower level, at the level of the speaker, in their human rights reports. The question for the United States is does it change something? Is this creating leverage? Other than angering Turkey, has American pressure, just verbal pressure, really changed anything? I don't think it has. What Turkey, unfortunately, understands and reacts to is economic financial leverage. We have seen that in the context of a German Turkish prisoner who was freed when the German government threatened to take financial action a few years ago. I think the only way the United States can have leverage on human rights issues in Turkey is if it wants to use the Halkbank case, the financial sanctions. And this is a big card for the United States. And I'm not sure they would want to waste it on human rights, because the United States also is, after all, a realpolitik player. If the Halkbank case comes up, I think it will come up more in the framework of what can you do for us in Afghanistan, rather than will you free Selahattin Demirtas or will you free Osman Kavala. I think the United States wants more democracy, but at the end, national interest, security always trumps this kind of values or human rights issues. That's the sad reality of balance of power, sad reality of realpolitik over idealism.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, Mr. Tashpınar, just because you already mentioned the Halkbank case and you also mentioned the YPG, is there any room for cards Turkey can play for the lack of action on the US side on Turkey's demands to extradite Fethullah Gülen? Is this in any way part of the agenda, at least for this meeting?
Well, when there's a bilateral like this, usually the principals discuss the matters, and there's not much room for the Fethullah Gülen issue, which has lost its priority for both Turkey, and of course it was never a priority for the United States. I think there are bigger issues on the agenda right now. I'm sure that Turkey may mention it. Maybe maybe Erdogan, in a moment of frustration, may say, "What have you done for us? You're asking everything, but you have not returned Fethullah Gülen." But I don't think there is anything new to say, anything new to deliver, anything new developing on this matter. And if anything, I think Turkey has kind of decided that the Biden administration will not do anything differently than the former two administrations. So I don't expect the Fethullah Gülen issue to come up.
Mhm. Okay. Ömer Taşpınar, thank you so much for having joined us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
As part of the fight against the sea snot that has invaded the Sea of Marmara, a large sea cleaning campaign was launched on June 8th. Environment and Urbanization Minister Murat Kurum, Istanbul Governor Ali Yerlikaya, Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, Marmara Municipality's union presidents and Kocaeli Metropolitan Mayor Tahir Büyükakın and Kadıköy Mayor Şerdil Dara Odabaşı came together in Istanbul's Caddebostan shore to start the campaign.
This campaign will surely provide morale and clear out some areas, but what is essential is that we solve the source of the problem. From industrial waste to domestic waste, there's a strategic prevention roadmap to be taken in all of the Marmara region. We're working on that. An action plan will be revealed next week. The main plan will be revealed within 3 months. We must all work to realize this strategic prevention plan without any concessions. I wish us luck. This is a very important responsibility.
Öyle mi? Oraya mı gideceksin?
Ya siz beni bırakın ya da beni alsın.
Tamam, beni alsın.
Orada tekne aldı bizi.
Tamam. 25 milyon vatandaşımızı doğrudan
This problem directly concerns 25 million of our citizens. Since the start of this problem, the President has been closely following the developments, providing instructions on the steps to be taken. We are all working towards solving this problem. Our responsibility is to protect the environment, to protect our seas. We have been entrusted with this duty. There are 15 different points across the Marmara, with 1,000 workers working the scope of this marine cleanup effort. Our goal is to clean up the sea mucilage on the shores and on the surface of the water. An important campaign has started. We came together with all the municipalities and the governors of the region. This is the accumulation of years and years of waste. Today, we have begun the cleaning campaign, but this is not a solution.
destek verdiği bir çalışma.
Following last week's developments regarding the Boğaziçi professor Feyzi Erçin's ban to give lectures, further claims have been made for more Boğaziçi professors. These claims were addressed by the Boğaziçi Resistance Group as well as the main opposition Republican People's Party chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. In accordance, government-appointed Boğaziçi Rector Melih Bulu replied to Kılıçdaroğlu, creating a controversy on social media.
While speaking at the CHP group meeting, party chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu addressed the government-appointed Boğaziçi rector, Melih Bulu, and called for his resignation. While addressing to Bulu, Kılıçdaroğlu said that,
I am speaking to Melih Bulu. Forget about being a rector of that university. You're not even capable of giving lectures there. If you have pride, resign. Resignation is a virtue. Professors are being terminated. For what? With which mindset? With which ideology? How can a university rector be against science?
Following Kılıçdaroğlu's remarks, Bulu released a statement on his Twitter account. The statement read,
I assume that you don't know that I actually gave lectures at Boğaziçi Business Department between years 2002 and 2010. Also, the decisions regarding some professors who had previously given lectures at our university to not give lectures in the upcoming academic year are not taken by me, but by the academic decision-makers' objective criterias.
In accordance, Bulu's I taught 8 years at Boğaziçi University statement created controversy on social media. Many political scientists and Boğaziçi alumni reacted to this and said that there is no such information in the university's academic staff record history. On June 6th, an official statement from the Boğaziçi Resistance verified that Ecmel Ayral is the second professor to be banned from giving lectures in the upcoming academic period, following Feyzi Erçel. The statement shared Ecmel Ayral's LinkedIn post where the Boğaziçi professor explains how they were banned from giving lectures. In accordance, 2 more Boğaziçi professors, İbrahim Turan and Cevza Sevgen, were claimed to be banned from giving lectures, but this information is yet to be verified according to the official statement from the Boğaziçi Resistance.
That's all from This Week in Turkey. See you next Friday at 9 p.m. Good night.